Well, hello and welcome to The Wrap. This is the show running up all things Zwift from the last week, racing events, tech, fashion, etc. Everything that you could think of Zwift, as well as esports, obviously. Today is episode number 38. It's Thursday, April 6th. I'm Nathan Guerra. Anna Russel is sat next to me. I'm coming at you out of Wisconsin of the USA and is still hanging out in the northern part of New Zealand, or at least the Northern Island part of New Zealand. What the two? You're two different.
Yes,
All right,
North Island.
North
North
Island.
Island.
I did it. All right. There we go. We are live on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find all of these episodes as a podcast as well on ZwiftCommunityLive.com. Head on over to ZwiftCommunityLive.com. We now have a page specifically for all of the episodes of the podcast. You also find it for download anywhere that you would download a podcast. Search The Wrap and Zwift. It should come up real quickly for you. Today on The Wrap, we're going to be talking about what we've been up to for the last week, as we always do, as we like to focus a lot on our esports suffering and training and even real life racing. We'll also be talking about the new Zwift Women's Race Series that just launched this past week, the Zwift Running League. New Pack Dynamics suddenly got turned on, actually. Pack Dynamics 4.0 are now live everywhere in all worlds of Zwift. We'll be talking about the next esports launch of a women's specific team. That announcement has been put out there. There's been another 100-kilometer record that has succeeded or fallen, whichever way that you want to look at that. But people have been going after this 100 kilometers as fast as you possibly could go. Sub 2 hours used to be the thing. We'll talk more about that. And there's a music program out there where you can do intervals to your favorite tunes. Pretty cool situation it looks like with that, with a developer. It's pretty awesome. Our guest today is Abby Mickey. She is an ex-pro American cyclist, and she is the host of the Wheel Talk podcast. We're going to be going off into the in real life world of women's racing a little bit today and hear about her story and her take on all things. Looking at, obviously, Paris Femmes avec Zwift this weekend, so I think a little bit of a journey down into women's cycling is pretty awesome. I'm really happy Anna put that together for us. And of course, we've got the jersey pick and the garage pick for the week. For our fashion, make sure to comment and let us know what you think of those. A 1 out of 10. Well, we got a lot on the docket to talk about here today. Anna, what are you thinking? What do we start with? What have you been up to for the last week?
Okay, well, I actually did. I'll start with this. I did the Zwift Running League yesterday. I haven't done that for a couple of years, and I saw it pop up 2 days ago. I should have probably seen it pop up earlier, and I was like, I am lacking a little bit of running motivation at the moment, and so I reached out to Team Fearless, who are awesome. Shout out to Team Fearless, and was like, is there any slots available for me? There was. So, yeah, I did a great running race on Zwift yesterday with Amy Mundasev and Joey Lithgow. And I've got to say, it was really fun. So, I don't, mostly on Zwift running, I just do workouts. It's just a really good, way to pass the time on the treadmill. There are really good workouts in there, so I've really enjoyed it. But I don't really do any of the group events or anything. But this one, yeah, it was fun because everyone on there was quite competitive, and you were put in the right pace category. At the start, I'm sort of going, just, chill. I'd done the tour of Watopia ride, and I'd had a bit of a cold and I was feeling way better. So I'd really pushed it on Epic, and I was like, I'll just take this run easy. Oh my gosh. As soon as I saw the people in my category, a bit ahead of me, I'm dialing up the treadmill. I'm like, how fast can I do this? It's such a different vibe to biking though, because with biking, I don't know if I'm going to explain this right. With biking, it's your own pedal stroke that determines how fast you go, right? So you can kind of be like, I want to chase them, so I'm going to push this a bit more. You don't program yourself to go harder, whereas on a treadmill, you've actually got to go up, 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 up. Okay, can I hold that? Are these legs actually going to be able to hold it? It's almost as if your pedals would start moving themselves and you've just got to keep up with it. So yeah, it was quite fun, and I ran really fast and hit all PRs for the year.
I could see that turning into a situation where you hit personal best because you just have to keep turning over whatever it is, and you just keep upping it until you're actually catching. And that would be pushing to blow up. I could see you pushing absolutely to major blow up, or just hitting that limit completely. That sounds like a killer workout.
Well, it is kind of killer. So every kilometer, I just upped the pace. I was like, can I up it more? Can I up it more? Can I up it more? And because there's that mental thing, right, where you don't want to like push it down again because you're already like with the people you wanted to catch. So anyway, that was super fun. And then next week they're doing a relay. So you kind of do 2 kilometers and then you tag, your teammate, and then they run 2 kilometers and then they run 2
Nice.
kilometers. Oh my gosh. So
That's
anyway,
a WTO thing too, isn't it? That's
yeah,
right.
WTRL.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know Zwift has put like no love into running. It just kind of exists there. But I think this was really fun. It kind of made it a bit more team based. But actually, one of your teammates, OMG Cycling, Dan, is there a guy on your team called Dan?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So we all crossed like the finish line, and then obviously suddenly anyone who was riding around would have seen just all these runners like spawn where they were and be like, great job. And he comes into chat, he's like, why would you run when you can ride a bike?
Oh gosh.
So, like, it was so I was so
Classic.
about to be like, how's that TTT going? But I didn't. And then but anyway, he was saying that he kind of came into the running chat, which was great, and said that he actually really missed his cross country days and track days, but he did agree that you can't get a high from cycling like you can get from running. So there we go. Had a great runner's high going on.
It's rare. I do get it because I ran as well a lot when I was younger, and cycling and running don't necessarily go together very well at a really, really, really high end of either, in my opinion. Like if you want,
yes, they do, Nathan. It's called triathlon.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Do your triathlon.
So you have to be like slightly slow at everything. Like that's
that's so true.
Like you can just go be slightly slow at everything, but I'm not putting down triathlon's amazing. Like my grandpa was a world-class triathlete. And I looked up to everything he did. It's where I get a lot of my genes for this whole thing. So not putting it, it's just that's kind of like you have to give up a little bit to be slightly excellent. You can't be completely excellent at all of it. Anyways. But I ran a lot and on the runner's high thing though, the only time I get that is hill repeats. If I go out and do hill repeats on a really hot night, I get that same like expanding universe feeling when the endorphins are that good. Like that definitely comes along. But only then, so there's definitely something different there. So, well, what I've been up to for me, what have I been up to? I raced another platform over the weekend, which is interesting. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. That was interesting. They got some things to shore up there a little bit. But that happened, and check that out. Cool, right on. I got for the things that were actually real there, I got absolutely smoked by Jason Osborne and Lionel V. Austin and others, and that was crazy. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then did a lot of racing afterwards. I actually jumped into the chasing tour immediately after and did the chasing tour on Richmond. And that was hard. I mean, those boys are taking it seriously. You could tell. So that was a lot of fun to do the chasing tour. And then I also did some more races after that. So I raced. I think I did 4 races in a row on Sunday. And then I've been doing so I'm kind of at that point where I broke my collarbone, so this is still, but obviously, like, I can do things with it. It's healing super fast. I can actually lean on it really well. And so I'm kind of extending out my later base period a little bit, mixing it with builds. So it's like all SST sub-threshold work mixed in with like 1 day of VO2 and 1 day of just race, and a little bit of over-unders. Find some base in the middle of that as I can. Throw in longer rides, so keep the hours high. Stay a little bit tired, but really focus in on like that next level of intensity. But it's not full-on race mode intensity, like only focus race mode and rest kind of a thing. Because I can just train for a while because I can't race my bike outside because I have a broken collarbone. So that's what I've been up to. I'm pretty excited for the weekend. I might do some tiny races, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, next.
Can I actually wait? I've got a question though. So, sorry, I'm still coughing from this cold. Okay, so it seems like every time I do a tour of Watopia ride, I have like interesting chat going on. But I just have a question to you and potentially the audience too, if people want to jump in. So, someone got like really irate and ended up leaving the ride because so the ride this week, the long ride went up Epic QOM KOM. So when I looked at that, I was like, oh, this is quite good actually. I'll stick with the bunch and then I'm going to push it up Epic and just like see how the legs are after not being well for a bit and see if I can push it. So as we're going up, I just see this chat with the guys in front. Now there was a guy in the front, Bouchard Hall, Kevin Bouchard Hall.
Yeah, KBH.
He's
yeah.
Velocio. And I recognize
his
name. So I recognize his name because he's really good, right? So I was kind of like, while I was pushing hard, I was clicking up and watching them because I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I like watching really good riders, creepily maybe. So I was watching the guys at the front and there was like Kevin and another guy and then there was a third guy. Now the third guy is like, I thought this was a group ride. Like all this stuff. Like, this is ridiculous. I was like, dude, like just drop back then. Like, just calm down, man. I didn't say anything because I was like, oh, flag. But
you just said, come ride with me. Come ride with me, buddy.
He was riding at like 5 watts a kg. There were like 200 people there. He was in third position. I was like, there's a ton of people around riding this as a group ride. I don't know. I found it really interesting. So I guess my question is like, I know those Tour of Watopia rides are group rides, but I think I look at them as like, there's something for everyone. Like I've gone into one purely with the goal of recovery and I just ride at like 2 to 3 watts and I find a nice little group who's doing that at sometimes I'm riding like 400th in the pack because I'm like, cool, this is a perfect little group for what I want. Sometimes like yesterday, I'm like, oh, I want to push Epic and actually see how many people I can pass up to the top. Can I get the jersey? I think, I don't know, chill, man. Like I think everyone just comes to those rides with like a different thing and you just take from them what you want. I don't think you're going to have 400 random people come together and ride together. Like people don't assume that that's what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. And like, that's the situation where there's group rides out there that are for that. And if you read the group ride description, it specifically says, we pace, not race, ZCRC. Or how like it's you can find them really easily within the Zwift, and they do a great job. Or the World Social Ride, or even the innovation group rides that hold a steady like 4 watts per kilogram for certain parts of it. That's a group ride. They kind of agree that this is what we're going to do. There's no agreement in Tour of Watopia, and you got to recognize who's got the problem. If you can't go back to the next pack and you can't drop your pride to not hold on to the front group, the problem might not be the front group with what's going on here. It's like the Tuesday night throwdown ride locally here that's like used to kind of be, it used to be a full drop ride. I mean, we had everybody, all the teams that were showing up that were local teams that were doing the Tour of America's Dairyland. They were there every Tuesday, and it was like, now it's slowly turned into like something else where we actually wait at one stoplight and then like and then it turns into more drop later. But it's kind of this in between of like, you get these complaints that are like, well, this is supposed to, it's like, what is it supposed to be? This is a drop ride, dude. Like, you do what you're going to do. Like, can you hang on? Why you got to be controlling me, man? So I'm with you on that. But, I used to be the one who always said, let everybody, like, full on freedom, Braveheart style, just go whatever, do whatever. Like, I don't care who you are. If somebody wants to go fast, but I've kind of chilled out a little bit. Like, people want, and if you had agreement up front, this is a group ride where we're going to stick together, then come on, hold the pace, dude. Don't mess up the ride and go off the front. But that's not happening to Watopia. There's a start line. There's a finish line. There's no results, really, but, I mean,
yeah,
I have to agree with you.
I do have someone, I see Andrew coming into chat and he said he's sweet if people are going to race a Tour of Watopia, but don't come into Facebook later and say that you won a race when it was a group ride. Yes. I totally agree. So that's a good point. That's where you draw the line. Coming into that now, new pack dynamics have, I think, been in the latest Tour of Watopia rides. And they were in the Z race I did, which I literally just did to get the sunglasses, so I didn't race it. But I actually used it to practice pack dynamics as well. And I've been kind of riding with pacer bots and just riding around, giving it a good shot. And have had a great back and forth with Aaron Bleakley, who most of the stuff I talk about will be from things he said to me. Because I got to say, like, in all honesty, I didn't notice like a massive difference. Like I practiced a bit, and yes, I noticed like nice differences that I was like, okay, this is cool. I'd notice more if I was full racing and I was trying to do breakaways or things like that. But in general, riding around, I think the biggest things I noticed, one, the pack had a nicer look to it. So it kind of, when there was a really big pack in, say, Tour of Watopia, it didn't have that weird look to it. It kind of looked a bit more real. The other one was that when in the race where there was a pack of a bit smaller pack, like maybe 20, when I kind of would drift back a lot more. So I'd drift back through the pack. I wasn't getting sucked along so much. I think sticky draft is either gone or kind of significantly reduced. But then what I noticed is if I fell off the pack, I could easily get back on. So I didn't have to red line it to like sprint back to get on the pack. So I could kind of get off. I wasn't in a position to try a breakaway, but that's my next step, is to like break away and then see if I can. So Aaron said that in the tiny races, which I've had it for a while, if you've got someone else with you and you kind of work together, you can break away and then literally just stay above the pace, like the watts per kg of the group behind, and you will stay away. So not like it used to be, whereas the pack could kind of just catch up no matter what. Okay, and then the two big differences. So those are kind of like subtle ones. The two big ones, which I guess are the more fun new things. No super tucking if you're in the group. So when I was like in Tour of Watopia, that's the first thing that actually indicated to me that it was on, was that we were going in the descent. I stopped pedaling and was like, oh my gosh, I'm not super tucking. But the person who was at the front of the pack was super tucking. I was like, oh, that's a PD4 thing. And I like that actually, because it means also if you've broken away and there's been a big descent, you don't have a pack of 40 people super tucking at like 100k an hour. Might not be great for your 100k an hour badge though, Nathan, I realized. And then the other big thing I noticed, which is where I messaged either you or Aaron and was like, have I got a bug? Was the flashing red power numbers on the top left of my screen. So every so often they would flash red, and that indicated actually that auto braking as part of PD4. So when I was getting too close or like bumping up against a rider, my power numbers would flash red. That I guess I was losing a whole bunch of sort of watts by doing that.
Yeah, so the flashing red is essentially auto braking that's happening when it seems like the game thinks you're not trying to go past the rider that you're about to pass. So it's essentially like, hey, no, like this isn't where you want to go. So it's a little bit of extra auto braking to allow what the game thinks you're trying to do essentially at that moment. Yeah. For exact timing, it was, I believe, 4 p.m. PDT Pacific, so 6 p.m. my time, I think, or is when it actually went live on Tuesday to all worlds. It was just hanging out in McCurry for a little while. They were seeing if there's any feedback, and it is a little bit more nuanced. My experience is that I've found myself, because I tail gun a lot in pace partners, I've found that it's a lot easier to get shot out the back and slingshotted from that, though, which tells me that the drafting dynamic is a lot stricter about like who you're on and how much of a gap there might be, and if the person in front of you is not matching. So I think the reason this is happening is because there's so many people that pacer bots go through. And because there's so many people that they go through that maybe aren't hanging on, or they're letting a gap go, and then they might not be matching the pacer bot, that acts like a breakaway. Now, in the same sense that the breakaway stays away if it holds a steady pace higher, if somebody comes to the back of a pacer bot, they weren't actually with the pacer bot, they're holding 2.0 on a 3.2, and they're all traveling at 3.2, you're just gonna get slingshot real quick. So watch out on the pacer bots. If you feel like you're getting slingshot, you're going to have to position yourself a little bit better, or anticipate riders coming through the pack to the back and allowing those gaps to open up, because you have to go by them a little bit quicker. And you do have to push past more. In all-out sprints, you are going to have to be positioned better as well, because getting past a rider is harder. Actually, in full gas sprints, you can't just roll right through. Like, you can't just accelerate through them in the same way, because they kind of got rid of that snowball effect in packs. And so there's that idea too, is that positioning matters a whole lot.
So then the question I had for, the question I had for Aaron too was, with auto braking and without the kind of big churning effect. I mean, teams could, I don't know if anyone watched Flanders and watched what DSM on the men's side did, but they went to the front on a climb and basically blocked the road. So stop the road and then let one of their riders go. I mean, you could essentially, I guess, if breakaways are going to work a bit better, get a team, your team on the front, going a bit slower, have people kind of brake checking up against you, at least for a bit, and then have your rider get away. Like, I do see that team positioning could be a lot more important than it has been, because you could actually position yourself to the front and do that kind of a thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that lead outs, once everyone gets used to this and you get a good solid team at a pretty high level of esport, but I think lead outs are going to start becoming a thing. You just make the pace crazy high. You set your sprinters up the third or fourth wheel. You can't get around as easily. And next thing you know, you've got 2 or 3 teams lined up next to each other, full gas in it. I think that that's a possibility if Zwifters get used to it enough and actually employ those tactics. I think it's going to take a while, though, because Zwifters are so used to the sitting in snowball, free watts, free speed. And then once a few teams try it, though, I think it's going to be like, whoa, we need to respond to this now because we're losing every single time. So I think getting the organization is going to be super, super key. One other thing on the pacer bots, I wonder if the same effect that you had of getting back easily could also be harder to get back if someone's driving the pacer bot pace. Because now I think that the pacer bot in the group will hang on a little bit easier if you don't just jump, if you don't orange number it, if you don't break away, but you just kind of ramp up, and a few you start trading poles. Because I've seen people try to do pacer bot best times and grab jerseys and see what they could do with a pacer bot without dropping the group. And if somebody starts ramping, or a few start ramping the pace of the pacer bot, you might find yourself in a pacer bot that's doing 3-2 that's actually doing 4-0, because the whole group is just allowing the pacer bot to sit in.
So what I don't know, what I noticed in my pacer bots were that what happened a lot more, and this is anecdotal, so who knows if this is as a result of PD4, but there was a lot more group split. So often there was a group that kind of moved away, and then there was just 2 groups kind of like riding the same, and they were just there. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it didn't come together. Like, it didn't string out. It literally just like, it was like you'd cut a group in half and put them 7 meters ahead. And so it was kind of this, like, it just looked different. And that's kind of what I go with PD4. Like, if it kind of looks different, there's something going on. I think Aaron had made some good points that like PD4 has been on for quite a few things without people knowing. And now that it's like out there and it's on, people are like, oh, this feels different. My Tour of Watopia ride was way harder. And it's like, oh, I don't actually think like it makes that much of a difference. Like, it's not going to make it really hard for you. And I think unless you're like a hardcore racer, you probably are not even going to notice that it's really changed.
Maybe. People have been around for a long time, and I don't know how else to say this. This isn't a knock, okay? This isn't a knock at anybody. I just don't have another word for it right now. But those who are good at lazy Zwifting will notice they can't be a lazy Zwifter as much anymore. That's what for me at least, like, that's what I've noticed, is that it's harder now for me to just tail gun and go to you kind of have to find a wheel now. You kind of have, you're not going to just roll around through. So I think that part, if people are used to that, like, in quotes, definitely, it's just, you could just kind of roll around.
But I think that's me, because I would sit on the back of a group and just be like, sweet, I'm like a 1 watt kg less than everyone because I'm just chilling in this huge draft shadow. But I did notice that would start to drift me off. So I would say, like, I didn't have to work harder. I just had to be more
attentive.
Alert.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the lazy mind. I just
Yeah.
that's what it was. It was like I just want to check out. I don't want to fight like
Yeah.
and so yeah. I got a few people raise his hands. People are like, "Yep, I know what you're talking about here." I like that. So I got maybe we're on to something there. Maybe we're on to something.
There we
So
go.
Pack Dynamics. I'd love to know more thoughts though. Let us know in the comments. Let us shoot us some Instagram stories or messages. I'd love to know what people are thinking about it. We could bring this up again even next week because it's so new. I think that the community isn't necessarily. So if there's more feedback that seems essential, we'd love to hear it, and we'll definitely bring it up in future episodes. But go check it out. Do some races, everybody, and let's see how things change up. Oh, one last thing. I am doing TTT tonight, and I want to see how that changes the team time trial.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
a big one. I think that because there's
Uh-huh.
a whole bunch of records that I don't know. Do you think it's going to be faster? Or do you think it's going to be slower? I wonder which way that's going to go.
I think, okay, I'm probably going to like feel like I'm Aaron Bleakley is talking through my mouth, but I think it will advantage those who have been practicing it for a while, really, really understand it, and they could start dropping times. I think people who haven't practiced and they get on there, it'll be the reverse. They're just going to be a bit all over the show. So I think that's my kind of answer to that. If you've been out there with pacer bots and in races and you've got a really good idea of it, you've got a DS who gets it as well, yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be an advantage.
Yeah, I think so too. I actually think it may make teams get sharper and smarter and better as well. I think it's going to force that, and it might make it so that we have faster times. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be tough to, we'll see. It might end up in faster times. We'll see. I felt really comfortable, though, when I was out racing this, working with other individuals. It felt like you could slot in, get the savings you needed, and then work when you needed to, and it was really controllable. And I think that's going to end up with some really, really fast times in the TTT. It'll be interesting to see how it goes tonight. Yeah, I'm excited for this number 207. I think it is TTT number 207. Wow. Man, it's amazing. All right, next up. Well, that's a good way to put it. Next, esports have announced that they have a women's team they are recruiting for. Absolutely awesome to see. It's been a question that has been popped up quite a few times, and they are arguably one of the top esports teams in the world and one of the best supported, as well as one of the teams that really helps with in my opinion, the growth of the sport, especially in the North American hemisphere. And I really love what they've been up to. But now they are launching a women's team. Have you seen this, Anna? Do you see the announcement?
Yeah, I saw it. And I'm not surprised actually, because I know leading into Grand Prix last year, part of the agreement-ish was that the male teams, if they didn't have a female side, would need to start developing to have a female part to their team too. So I wouldn't be surprised. Next may not be the first, may not be the last one over this sort of summer off season to start going into the women's side of things too, because it may, I don't know if it was like a requirement going into the next season, but yeah, it was definitely stated, you need to be developing a women's side. So yeah, awesome to see. I mean, one of my fave cyclists, James Barnes, is on next. So yeah, be cool to see a women's side of the team. Bit more competition out there, and that's always a good thing.
I'm just going to shout it out there. They are still in recruitment. A quick little statement that came directly from their management. They are committed to helping riders reach their potential through a supportive, inclusive culture, proven track record, developing talent that competes at the highest level of e-racing. Zwift Grand Prix, UCI World Championships, National Championships. That's what they're aiming at with this team. That's where they want to go with this women's team. They intend to propel women's squad to that same height that they've taken the men's, have 100% parity between men and women's squads, provide riders with supportive environment, culture to thrive, dedicated DS for their races and strategy and prep. They also provide equipment, 1% trainers, so trainers that have 1% accuracy as stated by the manufacturers, provide the same gear as they do for the men. So pretty cool. I absolutely love it. The support and it's what we've been looking for in the esports space is those kind of organizations that really put resources, value where everybody's talking, but going out and getting it for everybody is a whole nother
I think it'd be
story, a lot of
cool.
work.
I think it'd be cool if we start to evolve like IRL cycling and sort of have like people are on contracts and then you have like transfer season and you're like, oh, X person left Movistar and has gone to Next. And, well, that'd be a great podcast, right?
Those
we could
are
talk about all the
in-house.
transfers.
Those things, those
I know,
conversations
but you
are
want it
happening
to,
in-house here.
you want it to be like
everywhere, like a thing, and you talk about it, and we should have that.
Exactly.
Let's go. Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's
know that like someone's coming off their contract with this team at the end of that season. So who are they going to go to? I don't know. That stuff is interesting.
Next also said that I could say their stipends and performance bonuses as well with their team. I mean, big shout out to them on that. That's
cool.
That's way cool. I think that's absolutely awesome. So big shout out to them and their sponsors that are helping to make that happen. Next, presented by Insured. Nice job. And if you have other teams that want to put announcements like that, let us know. We want to celebrate every single team that is helping this space grow. We've been all about highlighting the teams from the get-go with Zwift Community Live and making sure that they all get their rightful earned space, when it comes to the broadcast. So now this is a cool one. Innovation have been putting on these 100-kilometer record breakers to try and hit those times. So what is that all about? Like, they were going for the 2-hour record. It was hard to hit. This last one I am seeing here, 1 hour, 55 minutes, and 24 seconds. New world record as far as I'm. Now, they haven't gotten Guinness involved, which I think they should at this point. I think they should be calling, at least I haven't seen anything with Guinness involved, but I think they could do something there.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Whenever I see these events come up, I'm like, that looks like a whole lot of pain. Like, doesn't it? Like, just like 2 hours at like threshold pace. Oh my God. I mean, they're all on time trial bikes.
They're all on time trial. So they set up an event. I think that they can use time trial bikes in the event to make it happen. So this is actually, for those that are listening to the podcast, we actually have some images from the YouTube stream of this. And, these last moments, this is the cool thing about the last moments in a record-breaking situation, is they've got to be all on the, like, oh my gosh, can we do it? They're driving the pace over and over.
Look at that heart rate.
Like the whole time, he's at 171 beats per minute, 153. So, I mean, and now the countdown's happening, 1.4 kilometers. Are we going to do it? I absolutely love those kind of events. It's so much fun with the build-up coming into that.
I'm looking at those watts, man. Like, that is insane. And like, for 2 hours, I'd be the lazy Zwifter off the back, just sitting there being like, how low can my watts go to actually hang on to this?
I think a lot of people show up and just sacrifice themselves in the first 30 minutes, even just to get it moving.
I'd do that. Yeah. It's I am like 100% impressed by what they're doing. I don't know if I could deal with all that pain for that. It just, oh my gosh. It's pretty impressive. So great job on beating those. That's actually quite a cool challenge. I wonder how low they can go.
Yeah, I think it's going to keep on coming down. I have a feeling it's going to keep on coming down. We'll talk about the music program at the end of the show. Definitely a little bit of a highlight that we want to have in there. Let's get our guest in, though. Abby Mickey, ex-pro-American cyclist. She is the host of the Wheel Talk podcast. Waiting to see if I can get a camera here real quickly from Abby, though. But Anna, just real quickly, here we go. I think we got Abby. There we go. Yep. Abby, great to have you on the program. And I think you're hanging out is it Andorra that you're hanging out in right now, but originally from somewhere in Colorado, if I'm not incorrect?
Yeah, I'm in Andorra at the moment. The mountain is right behind me, for those who are watching. And yeah, born and raised in Aspen, Colorado.
Nice. So I wanted Abby on the show, and Abby has said, like, she came on before for the sound check and said, I don't know anything about Zwift racing. So I was like, no. We want you on because this weekend, big race for women's cycling, Paris-Roubaix, brought to you by Zwift. So kind of pertinent to have, Abby on the show to talk about Paris-Roubaix. Also, there's a big Fondo coming up on Zwift where you can go ride 145.5 kilometers. So hopefully Abby can give you some tips and tricks to how to prepare for that. But also just wanted her on because she's doing huge amounts for women's cycling. She's got a podcast which purely just talks about the women's peloton. So you don't have to kind of sit through 45 minutes of hearing about the men's peloton and then 5 minutes kind of at the end giving like a little bit of a rundown of the women's race. So yeah, super stoked to have you on, Abby. I'm really stoked actually that you agreed to come on to a podcast where you don't Zwift race. But can you give us a bit of a background of yourself and sort of leading into, you know, what you're doing with the Escape Collective, your podcast, and I guess a little bit too about you do Zwift, so what you do on Zwift.
Yeah. Well, I discovered cycling in college. I ski raced until I was in college and got sick of the cold, so I decided to race bikes instead. And raced professionally for a few years in the US for a couple of US teams, United Healthcare, Rally, Pro Cycling, and then eventually decided that I'd had enough of the professional scene and decided to step away. At the time, I already had a podcast. In 2017, I thought that the women were ignored by the media most of the time, looked over, and most of the women that I raced against were incredible people with PhDs or kids or just incredible stories, and I really wanted their stories to be told. So I started a podcast with Lauren Rowney, who used to race for Bike Exchange. She was on Specialized Lululemon. And her and I started a podcast talking about the women's peloton, women's racing. And that kind of grew into what we're doing now, which is the Wheel Talk podcast. And that's for the Escape Collective. And yeah, we talk about women's cycling. We talk about the professional peloton and the ins and outs of that and how it's growing and what needs to change, and it's been really fun. I mean, I've been doing it since 2017, and it's kind of crazy to see how much it's changed in that time.
Absolutely
And
awesome.
so-
I want to know more. Okay, real quickly, just it sounds disruptive, which is always awesome in my like in some ways, and also it really what you're up to is making solutions, like not just saying, well, this isn't cool. Pitchforks, and then it's just pitchforks. You're like, well, pitchforks don't do anything unless you go and like put them in the ground and dig. And it sounds like you're digging, like and planting and making things grow, and it's really really cool. What is then for those who are in the Zwift world have no clue? What is the Escape Collective, and what's that all about?
Yeah, the Escape Collective launched mid-March of this year, and it's basically a collection of journalists. Sorry, that is my baby. The like wake up, scream, turn over, go back to sleep.
Yep, I know that one.
Yep,
we all
know.
know that. I think you're talking to the right audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Escape Collective is basically a bunch of cycling journalists who we cover everything from professional racing to bike packing to tech. There's a lot of different pockets of the cycling world that we cover. And it started basically as a response to sponsorship-based journalism and wanting to do things a little bit differently. So the model that we've set up, or that has been set up at the Escape Collective, is a membership-driven model, and we are very, very, very thankful to our readers who have subscribed to the Escape Collective, and a lot of them have kind of put their money where their mouth is and supported us to be able to read stories about racing that they wouldn't find anywhere else. And part of the Escape Collective is a pretty incredible collection of podcasts, one of which is mine. And there's also a bike racing podcast by Dane Cash, a very, very good cycling journalist, called the Pretty Serious bike racing podcast. And he does that with Cosmo Catalano also, he's basically a YouTube personality. You guys should, I don't know, people have heard of him. He's great. And then there's a tech podcast called Geek Warning, which is also very, very good. So it's really cool. It's a very cool collective of journalists basically who just want to do things differently.
I like it. So my husband and I are founding members, I guess, of the Escape Collective. And the journalism is awesome. So you kind of go there after a race and it's written well. It's got great insight. It isn't typical. I mean, we were just getting frustrated because you go to a place and you read a really generic article with like 20 sponsor pictures in the article and you're like, this is like, I just can't be bothered. So yeah, you guys are doing a great job. So shout out to that. Now, coming kind of back into the sort of Zwift fold, I know that you do Zwift. You may not race yet, but what's your kind of Zwift journey? So, and I guess leading after that question is, and what do you think Zwift has sort of done in the women's space of in real life cycling?
Yeah. So I discovered Zwift. Well, actually, when it first started, my best friend was one of the first people to jump on Zwift, and her name on Zwift was Taylor Zwift. And I was like, well, that's cool. I want to know about this company. But I started Zwifting right after I retired. I had a really hard time with bike racing at the tail end of my career. A lot of issues with eating disorders and just general negativity in the sport, in the environment that I was in at the time. And I didn't want to touch my bike for a really long time. And I had a really hard time riding outside because I'd been doing it for the whole reason that I was riding a bike for so long was to race and to race in Europe and to race the Tour de France Femme, which didn't exist in my career, but that would have been pretty cool. And so I was very lost, but I still had this pull to the bike that I couldn't quite let go of. And I found Zwift because it was once I started working, I had a real job. I didn't have time to go on 5-hour rides outside, and I needed some kind of outlet. And Zwift was so efficient. It was already, if I set up my trainer already, I could just throw on a pair of bibs, jump on the trainer, do some intervals, and boom, it was a really awesome workout. I felt great, and I could like watch The Bachelor while I was riding or something like that. So that was kind of in the beginning. And then I started getting really into the workouts on Zwift, the set workouts that are by people like Kristen Armstrong and Danny Rowe, and getting really into kind of reaching goals on Zwift. And then I got pregnant and I was afraid to ride outside just for the safety of the baby. And so I got even more into Zwift for that whole year. And it was incredible that because of Zwift, I was able to ride my bike until about a week before I gave birth, with proper maintenance of my own body, of course. And it's not for everyone, but for me, I found that I was able to kind of keep my sanity through pregnancy because it was so hard to go from being so centered on myself and what I thought I should look like and what I thought I should be able to do to giving my body over 100% to another human being who I'd never met. I didn't know what they were going to be like or if they were going to be cool. And Zwift kind of made it possible for me to keep a little sliver of myself through pregnancy. And then after giving birth, I was able to continue riding with what very little time I had. So it's funny, Zwift was a sponsor of a previous podcast that I was a host of, and I joked all the time that there really couldn't be a better sponsor because I didn't have to, there was no like ads that they gave me. I literally would just be like, I love this product. I can't say enough. So I genuinely just absolutely love Zwift, and I love the built-in workouts. I love the group rides. I just think it's so fun and so efficient and a very efficient use of time. as far as women's racing, it's been, it's hard to actually like say how much of an impact they've had on women's racing because it's been so big. I mean, from the beginning, if you look at when they first got involved in the women's space, it was through Canyon SRAM and kind of allowing a pathway into the peloton for riders who would otherwise struggle to find their way into the European peloton. For myself, who never quite made it into the European peloton on one of the European teams, I was able to race with UHC and with Rally in Europe, but I always wanted to ride for a team like Trek Segafredo, for example, and I could never. It's really, really hard for anyone from outside of Europe to find their way into the European peloton. Americans, Canadians, Aussies, Kiwis, it's so hard. And I was really impressed that Zwift was able to create this pathway into the peloton through their platform. And watching the women who were able to do the Zwift Academy and secure contracts on a team like Canyon SRAM, I had a lot of respect for the company. But then when they came on and they sponsored the Tour de France Femme, that was kind of like, the Tour de France Femme has completely changed women's cycling. You will be able to look back at 2022 in 10 years time, and you'll be able to say there's the women's professional peloton before the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, and there's the women's peloton after. And we saw the effects of it already in 2022 before the Tour de France Femme, where the peloton was faster, the women were more cutthroat in a good way. And the professionalism of the peloton is just every single year getting more and more professional. That was a terrible way to say that. And as the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift continues on into its second year, we're seeing just a huge boost of people outside of the sport who are excited about women's cycling, who never knew that it existed before, purely because the name Tour de France is now attached to the women's peloton. And maybe the La Course by the Tour de France existed before, but as a one-day event, it never really carried much weight. And now with a stage race that's completely separate from the men's race, it doesn't overlap in days, which is huge because like Paris-Roubaix this weekend, it gives the women 100% of the attention of the entire world. There's no competing with the men for how many stories you can get on the site. Since the women usually finish before the men, I will write my race reports and write my articles, and within an hour, they're all buried under stories about the men. But when the women have their own day and it's separate from the men's race, they get so much more attention. And the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift gave that to them from the beginning. I firmly believe that the ASO, the organization that runs the race, would not have given the women as much as they got if it wasn't for Zwift. I think that Zwift has been an absolutely instrumental part of making the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift a successful event, and hopefully securing its future for years and years to come, because it's such an important event. And yeah, so I think Zwift has been pretty massive part of that. Sorry, that was like, I feel like I talked for a really long time.
That was great.
No, that was really good. It was really good insight.
We need that actually, because it's an outside voice that has been not racing in this scene, has not been, has been watching from another corner. You see, like, we're in one corner hanging out over here doing our esportsy thing and watching, and then you're in another similar corner, you're media and, you know, talking podcasts, you know what I mean? You're talking head in a way, like, to be like, here's what's going on about all these things with cycling, but from another perspective, coming in and saying what you see actually happening with what has happened with Zwift. And I really see with what you just said, I just want to jump on that and the back of that and say the domino effect of what happened with what you just said, the Tour de France Femmes is going to have and is having a domino effect into the rest of the media. Oh, we need to follow suit. And you're seeing that need to follow suit where the highlights are getting parity now. The coverage is getting parity now. You're having way more articles, way more attention, like you're saying, on the women's side of cycling hugely. And I mean, from somebody who, there's the saying that goes, you're either a viewer or you're a creator. And as a creator, I don't have a whole lot of time that's left over to go and consume. And so I end up consuming just kind of what's put in front of me sometimes. I don't necessarily am proud of that necessarily, but I'm like, oh, this is here. I can go watch it. It's interesting. Great. And I see the following happening after Tour de France Femmes was launched. A big difference just in the last year, 100%. Go ahead, Anna. Sorry I jumped ahead of you there.
Yeah, no, that's all good. So I've kind of got a question. And so my background is professional triathlon. And then I do dabble in like elite esport racing. And both of those entities have had parity. Triathlon had a bit of a journey, but since I've been there, it's always been equal prize money, equal broadcasting, equal everything. And so over the last like 3 years, because of cycling on Zwift, I've become more interested in real life cycling. And I've got to say, I sort of watched and was like, why am I seeing the last 20 minutes of a women's race? And why did that person get paid like $2,000 and the male got paid $20,000? So obviously cycling is at a completely non-parity level. I mean, is this a trajectory on the way to that? Do you think it will ever reach a point where it is equal to men's cycling, or am I just kind of dreaming that would happen?
Well, interestingly, in terms of triathlon, I have no idea anything about the men's side of the sport at all. But I follow the women's side of the sport because I went to college with Flora Duffy, and she's just
awesome.
Like amazing. So hilarious. That's my claim to fame in the triathlon world. As far as the women's side of cycling for parity, I think that it is getting very close, especially in the top teams in the women's side of the sport. Teams like Trek Segafredo are paying the women on their women's team the same as the men on their men's team. So there are teams out there that are taking the initiative and making sure that there's equality in what they can control. But the problem on the women's side is I don't think it's actually the equality between men's and women's. There's a lot of issues in men's cycling that I hope women's cycling doesn't fall victim to. For example, there's just way too many races on the men's calendar. My husband races and I follow his races, but for the life of me, I couldn't follow any of the other races that are going on at any given point because there's like, for example, there will be 2 week-long stage races that are both the same level of race running at the same time, while there's also one-day races going on like in Belgium, and it just doesn't make any sense. So from my point of view, I hope the women's side of the sport avoids that. We have a pretty good calendar at the moment for the Women's World Tour that could use some tweaking, but for the most part makes sense. It follows we have set one-day events in the spring, and then during the summer there are stage races, and it works. So for when it comes to kind of parity in that way, having the same number of race days, I really hope that doesn't happen. And I think a lot of fans of women's cycling would say the same thing, because it means that the best riders in the women's peloton are usually always at the World Tour events. In the men's side of the sport, it's really hard to keep track of who's racing what. That's like a whole other conversation that I guess I don't have to get into. When it comes to like salaries, like I said, there's some teams that are doing a really, really good job of paying equal, or at least very close. But there's a lot of other teams that are not doing that and do not have close to the budget to be able to do that. And the gap between the top teams that are able to pay their women the same as the men, and the teams that aren't is growing, which is also causing a huge rift in the peloton. I mean, if you look at this year specifically, for those who have watched women's racing, ST Works is a team that has won 5 of the last 7 one-day events in Europe, and they are just head and shoulders above everyone else. And that gap is just growing as some teams are able to pay their riders more and some teams aren't. So I think if there is going to be parity between salaries in women's cycling, then that is something that we're not going to see for some time. The Tour de France Femme is going to have a huge impact on that, because the more people watch the sport, the more money comes into the sport, the more sponsors, and the more teams are able to pay their riders a living wage. And the UCI is doing a little bit in terms of setting a minimum salary for the World Tour teams, but there also needs to be a minimum salary for the teams that are one step below the World Tour teams, so that there's levels that you can jump on instead of just this massive divide. When it comes to prize money, this is a really interesting debate that we have a lot on Wheel Talk, actually, because prize money we don't really see as an important thing in the sport anymore. Maybe back before there were actual salaries involved, prize money was important for riders to be able to pay their mortgage or their rent or whatever. But now that it's a professional sport and riders are making money through their teams, what we want to see is actually the money that races put towards prize money go towards adequate live coverage, because people, as you know, it's, if you can see the sport and you can watch the sport, you're going to be more invested in the riders, more invested in following the sport and everything like that. And so the prize money debate is a really interesting thing, because I don't really, yes, it'd be great if the women's races all had the same prize money as the men's, or an adequate similar amount. Obviously the men race 21 days for the Tour de France, the women race 8, so it's not necessary for them to have the same prize money in that sense. But yeah, I don't know that prize money is a great thing in the sport anymore. And so that's kind of its own interesting little debate. I guess I took your question and I went my own way with it, but yeah, I do see there being parity in the future, but I think we have a really, really long way to go. At the same time, when I look at women's cycling, I think that we're in a really good spot for how far the sport has come in the last 2 years even. I mean, if you look at like women's hockey, for example, that is a rough career to be in. There are a lot of other sports where they're basically just completely forgotten. And especially after the pandemic, I don't know if anyone follows women's hockey. You wouldn't be able to because of.
Is this like field hockey or ice hockey?
Ice hockey.
Ice hockey.
Oh, ice hockey. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. I live in like the winterless north, so yeah, we just have field hockey.
Yeah. We're a hockey household. So.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, if you look at sports like that, I think that women's cycling is doing pretty good for itself.
Out of all the women's sports in the world, I would say it's doing one of the best as of recently. I would think it's a leader. It's a leader amongst sports.
I think it's growth
which is
trajectory.
Crazy. It's crazy to see that cycling suddenly has become a torchbearer for women's sports. Actually, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's nowhere close to like tennis or football. Like in the UK, I mean, with the feet, not American football. But it's definitely up there in terms of women's sports that other women's sports are probably looking at being like, oh man,
how do we do it? How do we do it? Kind of a thing. I would say that those two are fairly established, whereas this is like a newcomer to the like, hey, this can be a thing space, right?
100%, yeah. especially for
And
such
I think
a
for everyone,
niche sport.
And I think for everyone listening or watching is that, one thing I've been doing that now the broadcasting is actually there for people to watch. Like when it comes to these days before a big weekend of racing and, people are like, oh, who are your picks? And like immediately I'll be like, oh yeah, I think like Lotte Kopecky for sure. And they're like, oh yeah, the women's race. I'm like, yeah, who are your picks for the women's race? And they're like, now my husband is like schooling himself up because he knows I'm going to ask that question. And then we'll go on to the men's race. But I think like people now are sort of getting to know the personalities and the sort of stories behind it, which makes it super interesting, So it's, I think the more those come out and the more those sort of heroes of the sport come out, it's like at the moment, like you can go do this Annemiek van Vleuten workout in prep for Roubaix, and then people go, "Who's Annemiek van Vleuten?" And
I
then
did
go
it
look
this
and go,
morning.
"Oh wow, oh was it good?"
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Was it the VO2? Okay. Anyways, there's a lot of good ones. There's a good question coming in. I wanna highlight this real quickly because there's a lot of different opinions on this. Not being a woman, I have an opinion, but I want to hear, and I'm open to changing the opinion about distances and duration. And I've heard many women say that's not a big deal. We actually like to race shorter. I've heard doctors who are women say there's reasons for this as well. But I want to hear opinions about this. Like, do you want and would you say and push for 273 RVV, or should it not? Should we have something shorter for women? And what's your take on that?
I think that there is a place in the calendar for the women to be able to race a 200 plus kilometer long race, like Milan San Remo, for example. It's one of the monuments earlier in the spring. But the women's racing, in my opinion, is a lot more exciting because it's shorter. And I would hate for the sport to want so badly to equal the men's side that it would take away what makes the women's side of the sport special. And I think the fact that the races are shorter, they're more aggressive, they're more exciting from start to finish is one of the things that makes women's cycling stand out. So I don't think that physically the women have anything holding them back from racing longer races. And I know that there are women in the peloton who would absolutely love to race 270 kilometers every single day. But I think that the vast majority of the peloton thinks that we have something unique in the shorter races and wants to keep that.
100%.
Sorry, there's a bit of like heated debate coming into the chat about distances and whether it should be equal. So there we go. Hopefully you answered that question.
I would agree with that 100%
of,
as far as the intensity of the races being higher and women's racing. It's always been said, at least this is a common theme that comes up a lot, is that the women's races tend to be more exciting, have more breakaways, have more intensity because they aren't quite as long and people aren't sitting around waiting for the brake to get pulled in, all this messing about. Just get on with it and let's see you go hard.
Like, yeah, my view from a very new to watching women's cycle racing, like I said, probably in the last 2 to 3 years, just as I've gotten into cycling, is there's this, and it probably comes back to, Abby, what you're saying about it's becoming more professional with this money coming around. And I think you said cutthroat. Like, I was watching it being like, it feels like desperation. Like it feels like in the Tour de France fam, that it was almost watching it being like, you could feel that people were like, this is a make or break career moment for me. It just felt like that all the time. And so I was watching it like, I didn't realize how tense and anxious I was until it finished. And I was like, oh my God. Whereas watching the men's, I think there were definitely, I love the men's Tour de France as well. And there are moments, like Mathieu van der Poel's, it was a couple of years ago, winning that stage where he'd gone up those climbs. And it was just, you're crying and it's amazing. And maybe I get too into this, but I think on the women's side, it's just that feeling of desperation. And I know watching Paris-Roubaix this weekend, it'll kind of feel like that again. Lotte Kopecky is probably a big favorite, but there'll be people who are like, if I can bridge up, or if I can do something, this will be my career, you know? Whereas I think maybe when all that money wasn't floating around, it wasn't that same level. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that from watching it, it kind of has that feel to it.
Well, for sure, watching the Tour de France Femme last year, it was a career make or break race for a lot of the peloton. There were riders in that race who their career is already set. They're good for life. But you have one good ride at a race like the Tour de France Femme, and your entire career may change. It's the same with Paris-Roubaix. I think that a lot of riders see this race as an opportunity because it's so chaotic and it's so unpredictable. And there are riders in the peloton that will be looking at this race like, I can completely change my life if I have a good race. And in that way, it is very intense.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I like watching it because I like thinking that you can bring tactics from the women's racing into what I do in the Zwift racing. And I don't know what race it was, but it was Pfeiffer Georgie and someone else from DSM, and they did this like 1-2. One of them had attacked. She'd come back, and Pfeiffer went over, and then ended up beating like this bunch of like Lorena Wiebes and these sprinters. And I was watching it being like, that is like such an awesome tactical move. And immediately I'm like, could we do that on Zwift? That'd be amazing to try and pull that off. Because you're always trying to drop the sprinters in Zwift, because I can't, ride over 1,000 watts like some can. And so, yeah, I think as well, like just I don't know what it was, but I hadn't seen a tactic like that sort of in the men's race for a while. And even the commentators were like, that is like a textbook, that is amazing how that pulled off. So I think the women's racing too, it's showcasing like tactics that you may not see all the time in the men's race that, I don't know, a bit more obvious, or maybe they've got nothing to lose, so it just happens more often.
Yeah, that was classic Bruges de Panne a couple weeks ago with Megan Jastrab and Pfeiffer Georgie. Yeah, that was a really, really good race. And Megan specifically, she's an American, very young American who went to the Tokyo Olympics for the track and raced in the team pursuit. And she's one of the riders that I put on in case anybody is wondering, for Paris-Roubaix this weekend, I did write a preview with riders to watch and the course breakdown and everything that's available on escapecollective.cc. So that'll be up as we're recording. That'll be up any minute now. So if anyone wants to read that,
awesome,
it's there. But I did put Megan down as one of my riders to watch, like maybe a dark horse.
Wild horse.
No
more wild horses on course.
A wild dark horse.
We don't want like no horses on course at this one.
Yeah, no, that was true. That was crazy. But yeah, she's incredible. And yeah, that was such a good race. Those were really good tactics. And that's something that, I mean, I would say is pretty standard on the women's side, is tactics like that kind of make your jaw drop. And it's one of the reasons that I love the women's side of the sport so much. It's very unpredictable most of the time.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Abby, but there will be a few people listening who are going to take on the Zwift Roubaix Challenge, which is 145.4 kilometers. They've got a new Fondo route out, so you can get your route badge. What are your tips from being an ex-pro cyclist and a cyclist now on Zwift? What should people do? Should they go hit that Annemiek van Vleuten workout today? Should they rest? Nutrition? What do they need to do to knock this one off?
Yeah, for a ride that long, I would say for me, the number one thing is nutrition and hydration. Hydration is something I feel like is really overlooked, and it's super important, especially on Zwift when you're sweating so much because you're inside, obviously, to make sure that you're drinking more than you think is necessary. I'm not an expert, but I would usually drink like a bottle or two an hour. Because you can get off the bike and go to the bathroom anytime you want, so it's not really like you're stuck. And so yeah, hydration is key. Hydration is super important. Also, having a fan is really important because you don't want your body to overheat while you're riding the trainer for that long. And having a really good dinner the night before. The difference between feeling absolutely terrible on the bike and feeling decent, I've found, has always been nutrition a day out. You don't want to be cramming in your breakfast the morning before a really long ride and then feel super heavy on the bike. It's always nicer for me to have like a really nice dinner the night before. Not like, foie gras, but I mean like a really well-rounded dinner the night before. And kind of prep in advance.
I have
Nice, I like it.
one more. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome and 100% on. That's something that's been definitely chimed in a lot here recently in-house on nutrition the day before. I'm recovering today for the workout tomorrow. But I did want to ask as well about, it sounds to me like you stepped away from pro cycling and then you embraced Zwift for this like personal achievement space rather than competitive with others space, and then started advancing in that. Was that like a different, I'm opening another box of worms here, or a can of worms a little bit here, but like, was that like a whole new experience for you that you were able to embrace this thing that you were able to do on your own, more solo, compete maybe with yourself a little bit and like focusing on seeing the numbers go up or just stay in shape and then doing it obviously while pregnant? And, was that like just a whole new experience with the bike that you weren't necessarily experiencing in pro racing that you were really enjoying? I was just wondering about that while you were telling us your origin story with all this.
Yeah, actually, it's not really that different from training for professional cycling, because when you train, you're training by yourself. So you are your biggest competitor when you're training for a race. And then once you get into the race, all the work is done. You just kind of have to believe in yourself, and luck has to be on your side. And so one of the things I loved the most about Zwift is that it's a lot of the same feelings as training to be a professional cyclist without the stress of then being thrown into a race and not being able to control the environment around you. And so I still kind of have the same feeling when I'm training on Zwift, and I'm seeing improvements there as I did when I was training professionally, and I was able to see my power numbers going up, and I was able to feel better and stuff like that, just without the added anxiety of a peloton and needing to get results in order to get a job.
Awesome.
So would you ever, I've talked to one of your co-hosts actually, she was commentating some of the Oz cycling esport, and I asked her the same question, which is, would you like join a women's like community race team and like have a go at some racing? Or are you like, I don't want any like race anxiety at all, I'm just in my happy place here?
I actually have many times in the last 6 months said that I would like to race mountain bikes, which is what I did in college. Not like professionally or anything. I would just like to enter a mountain bike race. And my husband is from Latvia, which is in the Baltics, and they have a really awesome mountain bike league there in the summers. So we'll see if my Zwifting can get me in shape enough that I feel comfortable jumping into a mountain bike race this summer. As far as road racing or even Zwift racing, I think that I am going to I permanently retired from that scene.
That's a hard pass.
I would love to be able to jump into like a local criterium or something. You mentioned earlier, Nathan, the Tour of America's Dairyland, which was a absolute highlight of my career, was racing Tour of America's Dairyland in 2015 with Carrie Higgins. Just the two of us on UHC went there to basically like teach me how to corner. And it was the best week of my life. And I would love to be able to.
I might have seen you on course.
Like
I might have seen you on course. Yeah, that's awesome.
Possible. There's a lot of elbows thrown around. I was real lean back then, and I still managed to lead Carrie Higgins out to win some stuff. So it was super fun.
Very dominant year. Very UHC. Very dominant. I remember. Super dominant.
It was a huge year for us. Yeah, I remember the Littleton crit. I think we got 1 through 5 in that race.
Jeez.
It was awesome. But I don't think that, I think that the last 2 years of my career were so hard that I would never want to put myself in that position again. Mountain biking for me seems like it would be pretty fun. So I'm not ruling out racing competitively again at some point, but it definitely won't be on the road or cyclocross. That is completely insane.
Gravel? I just got into gravel. What about gravel?
Um, I am a firm believer in if you want to go fast, go on the road, and if you want to ride on dirt, then do it on single track.
Oh, okay.
Right on. Right on. I
Yeah,
like
I
this.
have controversial opinions when it comes to
Yeah, I
gravel.
like this. It's great. It's great content for podcasts and writing, though. That's for sure.
I don't know. I've just got on my third gravel ride, but I'm not racing it anytime soon. But it's like I've had some, as everyone probably hit, friends dying on the road, getting hit by cars, and so I don't ride my road bike at all on the road. It's just on my trainer. But I still loved being outside, and I found gravel was like a nice, like, oh, I'm outside and I don't have to worry about cars. So
yeah,
it's a
I mean,
little
I
happy place.
100% as far as riding gravel, I totally get it. The roads are terrifying, and I feel like right now, even more so. I don't know, something in the post-pandemic has made the roads a really, really scary place to ride. So when it comes to riding outside the gravel scene, I totally get it. The racing, something like Unbound, that's a hard pass for me.
Interesting. That is going to be controversial, I think.
It is going to be controversial. There's all these people around here trying to get us to race gravel, and we call it in our house. We call it Brazil style MTB because everything I've heard so far from Gabriella is that mountain biking in Brazil, in a lot of ways, for a lot of their events, is essentially like kind of gravel with a little more roughness, like it's like maybe like the latest Belgian waffle ride gravel kind of story. Like, so anyways, going down a definite bunny trail at this point. Everybody, this has been absolutely, Abby, honestly, like one of our best interviews ever, and I really appreciated your perspective on cycling and what you brought, are bringing to the table. I would highly suggest, I just jumped on over and signed up actually during this podcast on the escapecollective.cc. It looks really awesome, and there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of content over there. It looks like to go check out. I really like what you're doing over there, the home of independent cycling journalism. So pretty cool. There's an awesome shot on the front page of Allison Jackson. Actually, she's actually not dancing. Yeah. Everybody, just so you know, she's got a suffer face going on.
I did an interview with her before Paris-Roubaix that will be out tomorrow on the Wheel Talk podcast, actually. And she said that the way to ride Paris-Roubaix is to ride it like a cowboy.
Huh. I got to hear what that's about. We go on for everybody. Thank you forever, everybody. But I really, really appreciate it, Abby. I actually hope to talk to you again sometime in the future because it's been really great having you.
Maybe around the Tour de France time.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Something along those lines. That'd be really great.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for having me. It's been super fun.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you soon, Abby. Well, that was Abby Mickey, the host of the Wheel Talk podcast, as well as one of the founders of Escape Collective. Head on over and check that out, everybody. Wow. That was
she's
super
awesome.
Insightful, Anna. Extremely insightful.
Yeah, so I've been a fan for ages, and I was like, I wonder if I just Instagram message her if she wants to come on the show. And she replied. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like I was a bit of a fangirl, so that was just super exciting to be able to talk to her. But
really, were you really? I couldn't tell at all, Anna. Not at all.
Not? Oh God, was it? Oh no, that's so embarrassing. God, that's so embarrassing. But anyway, I'm a fangirl because she's fucking awesome, man. She just does really great podcasts.
There's a good reason to be. Okay, it's fine. It's totally fine.
So she, this podcast I had, they actually did one leading into, was it Flanders or one of the recent women's races, and they had Ellen Van Dyke on, who's on maternity leave from Trek Segafredo. But it was a really cool format. So they were like watching the race and talking about it while Ellen Van Dyke, who is a current professional, was commenting on all the ins and outs of the race. So if you want to picture that from an esport perspective, that'd be like having a podcast where we're watching like esport worlds, but having like James Barnes talking through the ins and outs and the little insights that you would never pick up unless you were a racer who does that and you know everybody racing. So yeah, that was they've just got really cool formats. Maybe that's something we do leading into sort of esport events, is it just gave a total like awesome perspective of racing that you don't tend to get otherwise.
Yeah, the walkthrough would be pretty cool. That's a good idea. Actually, we'll see if we can throw that together. Let's get into the next part real quickly here. I want to highlight, we said we were going to have it in here, and we actually saw the guy who made this in the chat. So I definitely want to just highlight this real quickly here. This is Beat Biker, exerscreen.com. You can do your workouts actually to the music that you want. You go ahead and you can click on through to the, you can either download this in an app store or you can just use the Chrome browser beta. I went ahead and opened that up and got this, and you select a couple of these. There's a couple of click-throughs here, everybody, but this was not my selection. This was not my idea.
That was mine.
This was 100%. This was Anna's, one of Miley Cyrus Flowers, which ended up with a very chill workout, actually, it looks like. But what happens is it gives you a workout. It actually connects then. You click through a couple of different things, and it connects to your trainer. Connect to trainer. Go to workout, bam, push play, and you're doing your workout to your music. It's written around the music. This is so pretty cool. Freaking cool. Like, and he's been posting these in our Discord, and we have a Span Me Music Discord channel in the Discord, and he's been showing workouts that he's done alongside of songs, and they look freaking hard. Some of these, like the Metallica ones, and some of these other ones, like I'm like, whoa, this looks crazy. So definitely, if you want to,
check it out.
These are probably like fail workouts. Some of them, if the song is too crazy, I would think. But I mean, if you're gonna look to get pushed, you're gonna get pushed by your music.
Absolutely. And I was part of a study like years and years and years ago on indoor training and the impact of music on the watts you produce. And it was found that you listen to amped up music, it actually impacts the watts you can produce. So if you're going out and wanting to do a really hard workout, I would say use this. Pick your song that's like your go-to when things get hard. Design a workout around it. And yeah, no doubt you will be pushing harder watts.
That sounds so cool. I love it. The creativity is in this community just never stops. All right, let's get into the fashion. It's a long episode here. Fashion is this week. Jersey pick of the week, Internationales. I don't even know what, I've never even seen that. Literally never seen it. What is that thing?
Yeah, I'd never seen it too. And one of the community sent it to me to rate the kit. And I was like, oh, you've done a really good general look there. A bit colourful, but I always like a bit of colour. And they haven't broken I saw the Team Netherlands put a post up, and very quickly Gina Van Rossum was like, you've broken Anna's cardinal rule, which is don't have any accessories bringing in a new colour combination. So they've slightly broken that rule with, off colors there of the blues. But the jersey I want to highlight, so this I hadn't seen either. And I asked, what is that jersey? That's epic. So it was from and it pairs well with our chat with Abby and the Paris-Roubaix coming up this weekend, it's from the Internationales. Now, they were a group of 10 female cyclists and 3 crew from around the globe who were united in the fight for equality and to boost women's cycling. So they had a huge sort of part to play before the Tour de France Femme came about, which was to have a Tour de France Femme. So they were a group who were really advocating for that and did a ton of good work. And they had a bunch of sort of group rides, and you unlocked this epic jersey. So not only is it a cool jersey, but it was a really cool cause as well.
That's amazing. I'd never seen that one before. When did it get put in game? Do you know the history of it in Zwift at all, or no?
No, I don't. So I'd have to have a look. I think they were running events actually around the Tour de France Femme, sort of leading up to that when it got announced. So they were sort of having celebration rides. So I'd say in the last 2 years. So hopefully they'll do something else this year, and then you can unlock that cool jersey.
That thing's
now
awesome.
The garage pick,
I give that a 9.5 actually. Like, it's pretty high. Like 9. Yeah, that's sick looking.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'd be giving that a pretty high score. Now, I put out the voting this week for the garage pick of the week because that is my avatar. I'm wearing full Watch the Fam kit at the moment in celebration. And I got those glasses. Now, when I posted them up, people had no idea how to unlock them, which makes me not want to say it. But as you know, on the wrap, I'll always say it, is you have to do one of the Z Racing series races, just one this month. So they're all the cobbled ones, and you'll unlock these glasses. This is actually the first accessory I have unlocked in a very long time that I am actually going to keep on my avatar. So I just love these glasses. They look epic.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. I have the rest of the kit. I don't have those yet. I need to do one of the Z Racing. And honestly, they're one of my new favorites. They're not my favorite glasses, but they go too well with the
Ooh.
kit. So, but I don't know. Some of them are like
What's your fave
basic
glasses?
classics. Some of the more basic ones, like something that's just a pure black. I think it's because I like cooler, like the cooler. I don't mean cool, like as in hip cool. The cooler colors, like I like the
Gotcha.
ones that. Yeah, I think that's why. As far as my kits that I like gravitate towards, like a pure black, or else like maybe just some of those kind of geeky looking like science glasses that they have. I don't know what you call them, but those are kind of more what I go to. But if I'm outside of just my preferences, these are awesome. Like they go great with obviously their whole setup here, and you can throw them into a lot of different, more colorful kits too. I think
Oh, absolutely. I like them. They're loud.
they are loud.
They're
I give
great.
them like a
And they got
7.58 though.
they got
I don't
about
give them like as high
I'd
as like a
s-
9.
ooh. The voting kind of came through at around an 8.59. So they're rated pretty high.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. They're good. They're good. As far as stuff that Zwift does, I mean, they're doing a great job on that. That's for sure. So, well, that is it as far as all the topics besides what we're up to for the next week. What are we up to for the next week? Anna, what are you doing?
Oh, this is a long show today, actually. That was a great interview. Okay, what am I doing? It's Easter holidays, so we're probably going to go to the beach. The weather looks real average, but anyway, we'll take some board games and stuff. Kids are all home today, so I'm going to go upstairs and we're having a family breakfast with hot cross buns and all of that kind of jazz. I will try and do a workout today. I've kind of done this new thing where when it's school holidays, which it had started today, is I really back off the training because I do so much activities with the kids. I last time just drilled myself into the ground. So I think the only thing I'll do coming up this week is I missed the first new women's racing series that was on. I kind of missed it, one, because I was sick, but two, it was on the Bologna TT course, and I just find
love that,
so
don't
grim.
you? It's such a great course.
It's so grim. And I've got it. It's quite early for me. I've got to get up at
that was one of our things we were supposed to talk about. So real quickly here, Kristen Kolczynski just walked away with it. I mean, just by like everybody else. There was a close, pretty close for third and second and fourth. Gabby got fourth, I think, and we were watching for Kristen to come through. Kristen comes through like 40 seconds ahead of everybody else, 5 watts per kilogram. Like, what?
If there's any course that is her course, it's that one. It's the Bologna one. So I'm super pumped for next week. Sorry, my son is yelling out to me. Anyways, I'm quite excited for the course next week. So James Bailey designed these. They've got really good numbers. So if you want to enter, you should come and do it. If you're a female, obviously.
Yeah, it's a who's who. It's a who's who, I think, across most categories, actually, of women's racing. We looked it up. We were like, this is awesome.
And it's a mix. So you start with a TT, and then next week it's a really short, like 7-kilometer race. So 7K race. I'm like, wow, okay. And then the week after that, something. So it's all kind of mixed up a bit. But yeah, who's who? It's great. Yeah, so I'll probably do that as my one sort of Zwift thing.
Nice. Yeah, so for me, I'm going to do intervals. Lots and lots of intervals and racing. I'm throwing in one race a week or so, maybe tiny races. I already did my SST. My over-unders are tonight. With the TTT, I'll probably do over-unders afterwards as well. And then I got to find some VO2 alongside of maybe like race 4 more times on Sunday or something. I don't know. It's something along those lines, but it's like just Nathan goes and buries himself in intensity is what the plan is. So that's what I'm up to as far as racing and everything goes. I do want to maybe in a future show have a conversation about this. Where is the future of streaming of Zwift stuff, and how do you stream, and like what's that all about, kind of a thing? Because I have a clip over on my Twitch right now that talks about the tensions about what platform to go to and why. My TTT tonight is going to be on YouTube, actually, my YouTube channel, and not on Twitch. And I kind of gave an explanation. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, maybe we'll talk about that in the future. Maybe even get a guest on. Hopefully we can find one. We'll see about that. It'll be down the road that is in that industry of the whys behind what they do with all those platforms. That'd be kind of cool at some point too, since this is all about, well, this has been born out of streaming. So, all right. Everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in. We have been live on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. You can find this as a podcast as well. Head on over to ZwiftCommunityLive.com. You can also sign up as a member on that website now, and you'll get updates anytime anything is changing or anything that needs to be highlighted. And you can find all the podcasts there, as well as anywhere that you can download a podcast. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Leave a comment. It helps us out a lot. And we will see you next week for episode 39. This has been episode 38. We'll see y'all next week, as well as out on Zwift and all that we are doing for the next week. Like we said, as always, from Anna and I, a big old ride on.